boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. I actually behaved myself for once and did all the things that you're supposed to do before starting up. Yeah, so that is something I can be taught. But yeah, now I got all the share this, share that, do that. So yeah, woohoo, exciting. All right. So, today we're going to read through 3 chapters. So we're currently at page 317, and we'll find ourselves ending on 350, leading into 351. So, 30-odd pages. So, I mean, yeah. Yeah, because I think what it'll do, it'll probably be two more readings, I would say. That's probably what we're gonna aim for. So this, yeah. So 3, including today, and then we will be done with that. And then I'll read through Sudraba, even though they're not like connected per se. They stand by themselves. So yeah. So I hope everybody's enjoying their weekend, or maybe you're watching this later. Hopefully your day is going well. And we're going to start off here with chapter 28. I guess a quick little refresher. We've been going along, and how to put it? How to put it? Let me do something right there. It has been. So the group gets to, they've been traveling along. Let me see. I think this is nope, definitely not that one. Maybe it's this one. Hey, okay, there we go. All right, so they've been traveling along. Nope, wrong thing. There we go. So so they've gone from Philodne to this little thing here by this bridge and this tower over this river. So they are currently at that location, getting pretty close to Shamin and Saedra's shrine and stuff. So that is currently where they are at. Yeah, so going from Mahri to there. So yeah. Let us begin. So chapter 28, a card played. For Ripson, whether indoors or not, the night rarely brought the comfort of sleep, where people, young and old, could discover a world all into their own under a mound of blankets and solitude. He found nothing but his overzealous mind, worrying about what tomorrow would offer and what had happened in his life to see him tormented in lands he still struggled to call home after all these years. The rage from earlier had sequestered itself into his heart as his mind ruminated on the day's ordeals and what could unfold on the remainder of his journey. In the darkness of his room, he tapped at the hilt of the rapier. His nap, while refreshing, gave him far too much energy for his overworking mind. Thinking moment. They're probably all sleeping now. I could leave a message informing them I have left for the capital, though I doubt having an audience with King Quentin any sooner will do much in the way of solving this problem. Only Dieter seems to enjoy my presence. His wife tolerates me. The Mahrians act scared of me. With the ongoing war and the Sol attacks, my warnings alone are nothing more than ramblings to the king, without greater proof. Their testimony will only hinder my argument. They'll swear it was the Sol. I know better. If only I could get them to understand. The agitated monk fiddled with the weapon as he debated on what to do. Then he slid his thumb across the handguard, catching a sharp corner, which cut deep enough to draw blood. He jumped from his bed, leaving the rapier behind, and went to the door. He pinched his wound to staunch the bleeding, and made his way down the flights of stairs to the main entrance. It wasn't until he reached the ground floor that he heard the sounds of others awake. At the main door, 2 guards Talking took notice of the approaching lumbering mass and straightened their posture. Evening, Ripson. Evening, Garmin. He rubbed his palm over the cut. A sharp sting flared up in his thumb. Don't suppose you can open the door, can you? A night stroll? Garmin smiled wryly. I didn't take you for a romantic, monk. He snorted as he showed them the cut. I simply want to wash this cut is all. Got it from practicing with that rapier I got. Is that even a cut? I got scars and bruises my mother gave me as a toddler that look worse than that. I figured you and the captain would appreciate me not bleeding all over the room more than anything. But maybe you prefer housework and washing blood out of blankets over drawing blood from your enemies. Garmin bristled at the barb. I heard you were carrying that thing when you got here. Couldn't believe it at first. I was telling Wallard here that it was probably like seeing a bear carrying around a dinner knife. Isn't that right, Wallard? The other guard sleepily nodded. Yeah, you're chattering about it. Hasn't tapered off any since. Garmin elbowed his compatriot before unlocking the door. You coming back in? The monk paused a moment before answering. I am. Knock 4 times. Make the second one stronger than the others. The monk committed the simple code to memory as he slipped through the opened crease to the outdoors. His exposed arms goosebumped the moment the cold night air greeted him. However, instead of deterring him in the slightest, the feeling enlivened Ripson even more. He investigated the area around the road and the base of the tower. Once satisfied with the lack of danger and no nosy guards on patrol, he walked along the southern wall of the barracks. He arrived at the corner of the building and continued his westward pace unabated. Before long, he arrived at the well. He toppled the roped bucket into the hole and, after hearing a splash, rotated the crank. The creaking of the wood permeated the opening, causing the monk to glance about and wonder where the patrol would approach from. As Ripson used his uninjured hand to move the crank, he wedged his bleeding thumb between his index and middle finger. After setting the bucket, now full of water, on the ground, he sat down with his back against the well's cold stones. He cupped his uninjured hand and scooped out some water to drink. He did this a few times before his thirst was adequately satiated. Then he plunged his wound into the bucket, like he was stirring some concoction. He whipped and splashed his hand in the water. After some time, he pulled his hand out and examined his thumb. He pressed it into the palm of his other hand and felt the salty bite of the cut's work, but it was no longer bleeding. He muttered the sounds of muted satisfaction rather than a coherent word before dumping out the bloody water and setting the empty bucket on the stone ledge. An extended grumble escaped his lungs as he rose to his feet. Ripson, I didn't think you would feel the need for a night walk here. This is a safe place. Captain Hurod stood some paces between the barracks and the well, with his arms crossed, still dressed in his leathers and gambeson. Just treating a cut, Captain. The monk moved until he was only a step or two in front of the man. A cut, huh? Like a wolf with a splinter, are you? Not quite. An accident on my part is all this is. Good to hear. Good to hear. It had nothing to do with the saw, filthy bastards. Though you may not care for it, may Saedra dress your wound. The monk laughed deeply. If it came from anyone else, I'd consider it an attempt to rile me up. Thank you, Captain. Though I don't have worries that it'll infect. Good. Captain Hurod stepped even closer toward the monk. I do find it odd that you have a traveling band of, how to put this kindly, misfits. Your own brothers and sisters didn't see the need to join you, but you've wrangled in some farmers from south of Clow Hall, a pair from Mahri, and a boy from Sameen we thought would have been raped, sold off, beaten, or any combination of those horrible visions. Ripson scoffed before his typical stony demeanor resurfaced. If you prescribe to fate, which I don't, and you know better than that, the moonlight reflected in the man's eyes as he shared a similar gaze he used with Jaharl earlier. Fair enough. If it wasn't fated, then it was merely circumstance. He then recounted how the four arrived at his monastery and Malam's sudden appearance in Faloil Forest. Nothing to mention while in Wallering or Falodne? The madness for a more detailed answer did not leave his eyes. Ripson glanced up the tower. Nothing to note. The young Mahrian, Jaharl, he played a little bit in Wallering, but with the moon troop setting up in Falodne, he really didn't get much of an opportunity to practice his playing there. I see. The captain pulled at his gambeson. The men are always in need of a little entertainment. Do you think you can convince him to play? He wouldn't mind, but his lute was broken in that attack. Regrettable. He paused for a moment and tilted his head up toward the sky. Thinking on it, the Mahrian did say something about that. I can't remember everything. A lot more important concerns in the realm to deal with than recalling every answer of every passerby. Ripson studied Captain Herod's muted reaction carefully. Perhaps, but I prefer to retain what I'm told. Makes it easier for me. He made no hint one way or the other on his feelings. Anyway, not certain you heard them when you stepped outside, but we have a couple of Moon Troop members here right now. I was hoping a small impromptu performance would have been in the cards, but to no avail. The monk's eyes narrowed as he watched the captain step toward the tower. I wasn't aware anyone from the troop was staying here tonight. They came from the capital and arrived a short time ago. Not that I'm their father or anything of the sort, but I thought they would have retired for the night already. Thought? Yeah, they're now playing cards with some of my men in the dining hall. Ripson began walking to the tower, passing the captain. How opportune. I'd like to meet them. Hold on, monk. I have something to ask you. He turned back with a bit of a frown mingling with his usual scowl. Captain? Captain Herod kept his feet firmly planted where he stood. The Mahrians, well, the boy at least, told me they were simply going to the capital to meet an uncle and join their friends who were tasked with answering Saedra's calling. That is the truth of the matter. We've looked at logs for the inns through Perail to make certain they hadn't come back through. Captain's head tilted to the side slightly. Some detour I'm unaware of from Mahri to here. We visit Eavir, the seer near Falodne, as well as a shrine in the Faloil Forest that I was told needed attending to, which I had mentioned. That you did. Seems rather irresponsible of them to not stick to the main road if there was a chance they would miss one another, don't you think? Rips had nodded in agreement. Certainly, but they have spoken rather confidently that their friends are either at the capital or either down south in Rowan to avoid winter. And that's from what I've overheard and what has been told to me by the elderly couple from the very beginning. The Perailian soldier's demeanor did not change. You do know what would happen to them, and to you for that matter, traveling with them as you are, if they are trying to deceive us and answer Saedra's calling instead of the couple originally tasked. I do. And you have every right to be as stringent in your questioning with regards to your faith as you are. Otherwise, I would not have the respect I do have for you, Captain. While I appreciate the words of Otumu, is not one who holds honesty as a supreme virtue from what I recollect. It's all about our ability to choose. In my situation, do you think it would benefit me to associate with people who blatantly mock a revered ritual? True, but make no mistake, Ripson. If they come back through here without their friends and have the blessing in their possession, I will show them no mercy. Nor should you. The monk slightly bowed as he began to head to the tower once more. Captain Herod watched as he disappeared behind the corner of the barracks. Once alone, he made his way to the well and fetched himself some water. Upon entering the dining hall, Ripson earned himself the attention of 4 individuals sitting around a large round table. The monk responded with his own look toward the group. He weaved his way through the tables and chairs as he approached them. As he arrived at the table, he glanced about its surface and noticed a cup overturned with cards in front of everyone. Stones and spades, huh? The monk grabbed a nearby free chair. Mind if I join? A ripple of snickers answered before one of the guards answered more directly. And here I thought Atuma forbade you from gambling. The newly arrived shook his head. Not at all. Then you're going to spend all the coin your brothers and sisters gathered gambling with a bunch of strangers? Who said I was here to lose money? Laughter rippled around the table. While the two soldiers were dressed in leathers fresh from their post, the other two stuck out like rainbows in a patch of mud. They wore vibrant tunics of verdant green and tight white trousers. Each had a wide sash tied around their waist. One was bright, like a freshly plucked lemon, while the other was a deep red, as though it had been recently dyed in blood. Accompanying his yellow fabric's vibrant presentation, the one performer wore a simple yet polished brass diadem, which had feathers of dark black and crisp white splayed out like a fan on the side of his head. The other wore a myriad of rings on both hands that he clicked against the edge of the table, sometimes drumming a short rhythm out of absent-mindedness rather than intention. A monk, eh? Going to offer some silent prayers to Nakri? Why you spread the word of Atuma? The one wearing many rings smiled widely. Money has power through simply being, but like I said, I don't plan on losing any. Let's drop some from all my winnings. The feather one barked out a laugh. Evidently hubris isn't preached as a quality to avoid, is it, Ro? Evidently not, Hig. Ro let a ring slip from his index finger and rolled it on the table surface between his middle and ring fingers. Not much to do with hubris when Atuma will see to it to provide me the means to demonstrate my might. This doesn't have anything to do with cracking skulls, monk, one of the guards added. Unless you plan on choking out Myron for a pinch of luck, quipped the other. We just started a hand. Want dealt in? Of course. Ripson placed his wrist on the table with an open palm ready for the card Hig dealt his way. He caught the sturdy card, brought it to his chest, and quickly looked down to see what he was given. A 4, huh? He glanced at the overturned cup at the others he glanced at the overturned cup and at the others at the table. How many stones in this round? 4. Okay, I'll stay in. What are you offering as collateral? A rapier I earned? Hig fanned out the cards in a half circle before piling them all together once again. Thing could be a rusty stick for all I know. One of the guards spoke as he re-examined his own card. Hey, he's good for it. I saw it earlier. That thing could fetch a proper purse if you found a good buyer. We talking blind, foolish, or both? Rose Quip earned a snicker from his fellow Moon Troop companion, who dealt out another single card to those staying in this round. The one guard shook his head and smiled. Not quite. It's a legit piece of work, and I'll front you 30 pieces of silver for it, Ripson. But if you can't cover it by the end of the night, I'll take that metal toothpick off your hands. Agreed, Record. The monk stopped the card sliding in his direction and sneaked a glimpse. He carefully studied the others at the table. 5, including myself. I'm on the low end, but 2 more could put me in a better position. I'll stay in. 2 more rounds passed. Each one cost the monk, and everyone else willing to stay, a silver per round. By the end of the hand, all 5 stayed in play. They looked over each other, searching for any hint or clue of deception. Without any further goading for higher bets, they each guessed how close their cards' total was to the dice's. 4 lower. Rickard flipped his cards over, revealing a total of 20. 3 under. Card total, 12. On point. Card total, 16. 3 under. Card total, 14. Ripson revealed his cards, which added up to 21. 1 over. Everyone's eyes drifted to the cup as Hig placed his hand on it. He drummed his fingers on its base as a smirk widened across his face, trying to stir up anticipation. The drumming became quicker and quicker, with a driving rhythm. Suddenly, he grabbed the cup with both hands and pulled it off the table, as if he was yanking out a great weed from a garden. 1 3, 2 5s, and a 6 was the answer of the stones buried under the cup. Groans came from most of the participants, and Record, in particular, shook his head at barely losing out to Ripson. Lucky guess, Monk. Rowe smiled as he collected the cards. Call it what you will. Ripson pulled the mound of coins closer to him. Maybe your prayers to Atum will keep you from walking a more adventurous path. Hig twirled his sash with his fingers. As a performer, Hazelson has always had a soft spot for those big lumbering ones. Rowe drank from his mug and belched. Better out than in. His fellow performer slapped the new dealer on the back. I'll pass on the offer. Ripson stopped the gliding cart sent his way from escaping the table. A shame. Asen is a wonderful leader to follow. Rowe winced as he was elbowed in the side by Hig. Better to let her speak for herself than to have us chuckleheads do it for her. Guards puffed out their chest and were willing to offer their own services in light of Ripson's refusal, but were quickly dismissed. The night passed in the jovial comfort of drink, a game, and Hig and Rowe were recounting some of the more tawdry details and experiences they had as somewhat newer members of the Moon Troop. Though not quite as an environment, Ripson felt a tinge of warmth in his heart with these people, even if only for a moment. His mind drifted to his childhood. Like anyone with enough life lived, he lost himself in memories and wandered through the corridors constructed from his past, as though he was searching for that sliver of his soul, that long-lost fragment, truly wondering if it had been snuffed from existence and buried forever in the past, or simply hiding from who he had now become. Despite his mental churnings, he held together stoically. His mind may have been a tempest, but his purpose remained clear. Clear as it was, Atumu had made it even clearer for the monk, as he won often and plenty throughout the night. So, just a little bit of playing and just the idea of just a little bit of a different card game, cards and dice. And, yes. That and also having that in there was kind of a nice way to pull back and give Ripson a little bit. Ripson hasn't had much in the way of quote-unquote time to shine or just sort of be there by himself, so to say. So this is kind of giving him an opportunity to be front and center, as grumpy as he is. So yeah, just a little bit. That also kind of gives me the warm fuzzies, reminding me of like an old what am I thinking? An old fanfic that I, not to the same degree, but just in there. That's the other thing too, is kind of, and maybe some people might not like it so and want more like going into it, but in the same hand, I feel like personally, it's like open the curtain a little bit, but then let other people be able to like wander about it and fill in the gaps themselves. That's kind of my approach, which I mean some people might not like, some people might disagree with, but that's what I do for it. So yeah. So, and it's going to come up here again in this next chapter. which might not be the best way to go about it. And I'll kind of think about it. Because it's kind of like, is it really necessary to have that in there? Outside of just, I don't know, like, because I know it does fall into the show not tell aspect, but if you're just, I guess it's kind of questioning whether it's important enough to want to show something like that. But I don't know. Some people might disagree. Some people might agree. But that is the fun of writing and stuff, I guess, right? There is nothing listed for 28. I guess if there would be anything listed for 28, I guess Nakri, which is the god of coin, but I thought I'd already mentioned it before in a different chapter. Yes, god of wealth and coin, chapter 20. So, boom, 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 boom. All right, chapter 29, target practice. Stillness settled in the morning air as a couple dozen soldiers joined Captain Herod to watch Josephine perform her shooting to see if they could discern any new techniques or insight to help their own archery. Dieter, Jaharl, Ripson, and Tamilia assisted in placing straw targets throughout an area north of the tower, where an open dirt court was used for drills and other physical exercises for both sport and training. Malam stayed with Josephine and the group's belongings, which had been gathered in a loose pile. He had spent a short while looking for his rapier. However, once he saw that Ripson had kept it in his possession, despite helping moving around the targets, the boy resigned himself to laying by one of the most comfortable satchels. One of the more comfortable satchels, and using it as a pillow to prop himself up slightly. After testing out her bow, Josephine eyed her lounging traveling companion not too far away. Not feeling too well? Malam shook himself from his daydream. What? I was simply wondering. Here you are relaxing while the others have been kind enough to help set up, especially after yesterday's ordeal. Is everything all right? His eyes drifted from looking at the former to searching where the others were, moving about on the court. I think they have it covered. I'll simply get in the way. She frowned. Avoiding my question won't do you any good. Are you all right? He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. After a few breaths, he bobbed his head in the affirmative. I'm certain. She bent down and placed a hand on his shoulder. It's okay if you aren't. I still don't feel too well after yesterday, and here they have me wanting to shoot this thing like nothing happened. It's okay not to feel good after that. It doesn't make you any stronger to act like you're fine. He writhed under the farmer's touch before wiggling out of her reach. I'm fine. You may be bothered by what happened, but they were Saul. They earned their deaths. I don't believe you mean that. Josephine stood up and retreated a few steps away from Malam and the pile of their belongings. Something's bothering you about what happened yesterday. I can feel it. Malam rolled his eyes. Oh, a farmer who's also some sort of seer, huh? Perhaps you and Dieter can join that weird Aovir woman back in the forest and make some sort of coven. She squinted at the boy before turning to see someone approaching from the other side. Captain Herod, I hope you're not expecting too much from me. He grinned widely. Rest assured, we will be studying more than judging. Anything to help us in dealing with the Saul is appreciated. And from what your husband recounted regarding yesterday's attack, you have a knack with a bow, which could benefit us all. Josephine slumped her shoulders. I do wish people would stop bringing that up like it's some sort of achievement. Apologies, didn't mean to take your talents lightly. Acting like some boy seeing a traveling show for the first time. However, even if there isn't anything particularly unique to how you practice your archery, the men could use the lesson or the reminder. No one's ever too old to learn something from someone else. Thank you, Captain Herod, even though I feel like there may be a little more to this than simply having your men be witness to my abilities. And you're not wrong. The pair traded questioning glances. And what do you mean by that? I want to know from both of you. He aimed the question at the pair, directing it more so at Malam than Josephine. Without pointing a finger in their direction, he bobbed his head toward the other traveling companions, still setting up targets. Why are those two Mahrians heading west? Straight to the point, the farmer drew back her bow, aiming it at an imaginary target with an imaginary arrow before slowly easing her draw. They were hoping to run into their friends while heading to the capital, from what I gather. Is that so? He digested the answer for a moment before directing his attention toward the boy. And you, anything to add? Malam sluggishly shook his head, before more interested in one of the loose straps of a satchel than the question being asked. They can't read. Ripson and I helped them look through the records of one of the innkeepers in Philodne. What was his name? Malroy? Or Malco? Something of the sort. His name is Malco. She looked at the leader of the garrison as he stood, unmoved, physically and emotionally. Something the matter? My husband and I were actually aided by Jaharl Tamilia and a calendar guard from bandits. We've been with those two practically since they left Mahri, and they've been direct on their course. A brief smile flickered across the man's face. Once again, forgive me. I don't mean to be like a briar patch, pricking with every thorn I have in an effort to draw blood. However, my faith demands of me to discern those pious among us from those simply wanting to hold such an appearance. Of course, she began another practice draw, right as Captain here had silently dismissed himself. Making a move to join his fellow soldiers, Josephine spoke up once more. Since you are such a religious man, may I ask you a question, Captain? He immediately stopped and spun around to face her. Of course, speak freely. Well, my husband and I are not from Perail, so our understanding is limited. I could be wrong. Please don't hold it against me. I think nothing of the sort. What is it you wish to ask? From what I have heard, Saedra saved Katos and Aaliyah from Humdrill's anger. That is correct, but I wager you have something more to ask instead of simply confirming that detail. I do. She paused as she considered her next words. I guess I'm having difficulty figuring out why there's such fervor in Saedra's calling. It was the only utterance the soldier could muster at first, as he contemplated how to remedy the confusion. I first would ask a question of my own in return. Do you not have your own rituals in your homeland? We do. Then that is no different than Saedra's calling. In what way? Shall I explain this? He dug into his heart for the words he wanted to use. Seeing the man struggle, she added, perhaps I'm a little confused about your heightened concern with Jaharl and Tamilia. Captain Herod paused as he thought over how he wanted to phrase his answer. Pardon me if my memory isn't quite perfect, but I once had the opportunity to hear directly from the priestesses at Saedra's shrine in Samin, which is where the blessing is received and the calling is answered. From what they told me, Saedra's calling is our agreement with Saedra, in understanding that we all share a common bond, buried in a time long since gone. Despite you being from beyond Perail, and Ripson too for that matter, we all have a connection through Katos and Aaliyah. To sully that beautiful truth by lying, by deceiving others who share that bond, we cannot allow that. That is why we are so harsh in treatment with those who break that promise. They do not deserve our mercy. Does that clear up any possible misconceptions you had? She slowly nodded as she digested what he had told her. I think I understand it a bit better. Thank you, Captain Herod. You're welcome, and thank you as well. Much like with the men and watching your archery to come, it never hurts to have a little target practice to make certain you understand yourself and who you are. And that is the end of chapter 29. Probably is the better word to use for it. And it could stand to have a little more to it, I imagine. I don't know. I'll make a note for it. It'll probably something that I don't want to quite go through the details of oh, here's more of it, because you already get the idea that she knows how to use the bow. So it would just, sure, it'd be reinforcing it with more target practice, but I think it's a little bit more of a, maybe me being far too trying to be sneaky clever with target practice actually referring to Herod's behavior as he continues to poke and prod and figure out what's the deal here. Especially since he is considering, speaking as being a much more pious individual. And it's kind of like, okay. Yeah. They have not had really too many people pry into their behavior, but as they're getting closer, it would make much more sense that there would be that. And so it's also a bit peculiar. It also adds into the youth of somebody like Malam to not pry too much into that, even though they're understanding and concerned about it. So it is, so that's what that is. So I would probably expand chapter 29 a little bit, because it is a awfully short, but I don't know if that was just me trying to be cute and let's just have a very short chapter. No need to. Yeah, it's kind of the pacing of it. Sometimes it's nice to just kind of give that little bit of a, just kind of give them a little bit of a surprise, as it were. Okay. Chapter 30, Thickening Stew. After a filling meal of eggs and peppered tomatoes. How about potatoes? Peppered potatoes, the six adamantly stuck to their plans to continue their trek westward, especially as the fleeting warmth of mid-morning offered some comfort to enable a steady marching pace. While nothing fancy occurred, the guards left impressed to see a somewhat portly woman who could pass for their mother, and for some their grandmother, shoot as quickly and as accurately as she did, infuse them with an energy to rehone their own archery. Captain Herod had been effusive with his praise, welcoming them back once they were ready to head east toward home, with no hint of his inner suspicions toward the young Marians. I should no more hint. Unlike the day prior, the group remained huddled close together, with Dieter and Ripson leading the way once more. Through some aches and soreness, they marched toward Samin, toward Malam's hometown. The fields that encompassed the road before they had crossed the Great Bridge of Perail were replaced with much more rugged terrain. To the south, a thick mess of trees and wild vegetation took root, blocking their view to such a degree there left no chance for them to even... There left... Okay. There left no chance for them to eye... Perail Castletown off in the distance. To the north, like great bulky earthen knuckles and fingers, the great Kerhart Mountains on the kingdom's northern border stretched out and upward to greet all approaching travelers. Snow-capped, the far-off jagged tops, like fingernails painted white with a dollop of purple mixed in. Okay. Make a note. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Soon enough, the road looked like an elongated raft of stone climbing wave after wave as it snaked over hills. More trees sprung up along the northern side, once again shrinking the world around them, though not nearly as stifling as the road through the folial forest. They continued their trek well into the afternoon before finally opting to rest. Though the wooded sides provided the road a wide berth, the six elected to remain near the middle of the wide path, with their eyes trained to both the north and south. They snacked on some bread, small rose apple pies bought in Wallerand, and dried out bacon given to them by the guards before leaving the tower. While watching their northern flank, Jarl's mind was anywhere and nowhere simultaneously. He absent-mindedly bit into his food, tasting none of it. This area looks familiar. Was this where I had that vision at Aover's? What was that? Was it from the smoke? It felt so real, though. But what's real now is a problem we need to contend with. We'll have to lean on the others here until we can get to Perail Castletown and meet Tamelia's uncle. He'll be able to provide us with enough to get back home. If not, I'll have to find some work. Maybe we can get back to wallowing with Ripson, but... Hey, Jaharl. He shook himself from his planning. Josephine softly chuckled. Didn't mean to wake you from your daydreaming. He frowned. I wasn't daydreaming, only thinking. Well, don't overdo it. I can see the smoke and steam pouring from your ears. The Mahrian's expression worsened into a scowl. See? Frown any harder and it'll end up like that. Don't let such a tender face harden or you'll end up looking like my husband, or Ribson. Her laughter was joined by Tamelia's while the two men shook their heads. Eventually, a smile creased over his scowl. Fair enough. Much better already, Josephine nodded as she beamed a smile toward the troubled young man's direction. Ripson bit down on his portion of bread. He then cupped his hand and studied the remaining chunk he had before rolling it into a ball in his palms. After he finished chewing, he squeezed the morsel tightly before flinging it toward the trees to the north, like he was trying to skip a stone across the pond. It won't be long until the southern woods recede some more. Anything of particular interest between here and Samine? Dieter rolled the last portion of his bacon around a chunk of bread and devoured it. The monk squinted down the road to the west. He scratched the top of his tongue with his teeth and spat away from the group. A little ways ahead, there's a quarry not too far from the main road. We'll pass it before nightfall. A lot of stone excavated from there. It helped build Samine and Perail Castletown from the records I've seen. Tamelia wiped some bacon grease away from her face with her sleeve. You think we could rest there? Mom scoffed at her question. Unless you're interested in doing some serious crime or joining the army to get stationed there, don't count on them opening their doors for us. The monk's gaze drifted to meet the boys. Was it gated and guarded when you passed by? He kicked at a clump of dirt on the road. It was gated, but I couldn't tell you if it was guarded or not. The place is buried in the woods, and it's not like we stopped to visit. It would be difficult to view from this road, wouldn't it? Ripson tapped a meaty finger on the rapier before jumping to his feet. Okay, let's get going. Once we pass by that court, the road will grow somewhat busier. The farmer nodded in acknowledgement as his wife mirrored him. The closer we get to some people again, the more at ease I'll begin to feel. The afternoon march consisted of a moderately brisk pace. While uneventful, the long stretch of hushed trees and rocky terrain slowly grated on the group's nerves. Silence prickled. Maybe I should have said pricked. I think that's probably the one where. Let's go with pricked. Pricked their imaginations with all sorts of hidden dangers, both in the shapes of man and beast. When they walked past the short side road that cut through a hill and disappeared to the north, a moment's hesitation teased them to investigate the path to the quarry. However, Ripson and Dieter guided the group forward, remaining on their course to Samine. With their steady march, the group didn't immediately notice the abrupt change in the air. What had lingered as a tepid reprieve from the cold and snow in the morning had dissolved into a damp chill that eroded their warmth, like waves lapping against a cliffside. True to the monk's claim, the trees to the south gave way to farmlands once more, while the northern portion of the woods receded a short stretch before a wall of dirt and rock sheered upward. Beyond their close proximity, the hills grew more jagged and taller, as though they were being pulled out of the ground by the mountains looming large farther north. Where farms peppered the fields some distance away from the main road in the eastern portions of the kingdom, the western portion of Perail offered numerous smaller farms huddled closer, almost like a chain of small, tiny hamlets leading toward the city, like streams feeding into a lake. Some families rushed about their land, finishing up their tasks as hurriedly as they could in the waning moments of daylight. Others joined their neighbors around bonfires, chatting loudly as the younger children ran about, exerting any energy they may still had. Up the road, small carts, some being pulled by people, some by mules or horses, crawled along like ants marching on a thin trail. White wisps fluttered briefly before vanishing into the air as the monk spoke. We'll journey into dusk. The people here are quite protective of their land and aren't necessarily willing to welcome a group of strangers into their home for the night, or even offer a spot of dirt for our tents. Josephine glanced to her left and right. Shame their warmth is strictly preserved for those closest to them. Makes for very cold people. Perhaps Sameen itself is different. What do you say to that, young Malam? Dieter glanced behind him toward the preoccupied boy. Me? His face bunched to one side as though he were chewing on a wheat stem. I don't think it's cold. The wind can be biting sometimes, but it's not like it's up in the mountains or anything. The group stopped for a moment as they all gave him a questioning look. Do you have honey in your ears? Tamelia shook her head. She was talking about the people, not the town. Not the weather. That's what I should say, not the weather. Oh. Mom's cheeks flushed red as the group started marching once more. They're warm, I guess? There are so many people who live there that it's hard to say. From my experience, and my wife's, the more people there are, the more like a tide they act. When you interact with one person in an area or a town or a district, you get an idea what their group is like. I don't know about that. Malam scratched at his collarbone. Yeah, Dieter. Tamelia stepped around a loose-looking stone in the road. That'd be like trying to say everything we do is like the buzzing of bees. One hive doing one thing, one doing another. That's not too far off for a good analogy. Josephine chuckled as she tapped her husband on the shoulder. He shot her a rueful smile before looking at Tamelia. What I mean is, the more people there are, the harder it is for a single person to move them this way or that. It'd be like single raindrop guiding the storm. Not likely, now is it? The young woman let out a grumble, mulling over the farmer's question. No. It takes the wind, the clouds, the rain, and the land or water it falls on to cause the storm. And much like a storm, it takes a confluence of a myriad of situations, people, and resources to effectively navigate people, too, as my wife would like, and instill in them the virtue of embodying a greater extension of warmth to strangers and neighbors alike. Sounds like a difficult way of saying the biggest group gets their way. If they don't want to be friendly, that's not likely to change from some busy bee buzzing in someone's ear. The memory of the voting night in Mahri flashed into Charles' mind. The tide metaphor makes sense when you think about it. Dieter nodded to himself, while the others gave each other odd looks while quietly allowing the conversation to drift away. Go against the tide and you could get hurt or simply drowned. Dun, 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 dun. Making notes. Okay. A short time and some distant stairs later, the group stopped in front of a small farmhouse perched with its back against a steep hill not too far from the main road. Dusk had comfortably settled into the sky, with night closely nipping at its heels. With it, and the fleeting warmth of daylight having entirely fled to maybe return tomorrow, a wet chill invited itself to stay more prominently. Dieter and Josephine stood rigidly as they hugged themselves tightly. Jahal and Tamelia fidgeted in place, looking like they were dancing, as they shifted their weight from one foot to the other. Malam, full of energy, paced up and down the same 10 paces on the side of the road. While they waited, Ripson followed a dirt trail to the small, sturdy wooden house. It stood on a small elevation of dirt skirted by a wall of stone, which had been excavated from the quarry. With the way the house sat over the edge, a wide ledge jutted out beyond the stone wall, A wide ledge jutted out beyond the stone wall and house, offering a makeshift porch for its owner. who was sitting under the roof. A middle-aged man wrapped in layers of robes sat with his legs dangling over the ledge. A small candle perched precariously close to the edge provided the only warm source of light in his proximity. His eyes followed the approaching monk as though he had spotted a spider walking its way toward him. However, once the monk was within a few steps, the man grinned. "Ah, Ripson didn't expect trouble, such as yourself, to shadow my door so soon after the last visit." Let's change that. Yes. The man squeezed his form tighter as though he was trying to fold himself in half. Suddenly, his back popped loud enough for even Ripson to hear. The monk's face contorted into a disgusted display as the old man smiled again. "Move around more, Radomil, and your body will stop crying out like a forest gone dry." "So you say. Some of us are stuck here, doomed to watch over the same stretch of road till someone says otherwise." Radomil kicked his legs as though he was trying to run away. Ripson leaned closer to his monastic brother as he remained eye level with him. "Nothing to report, I take it?" The older monk mirrored his guest. "Is the winter night dark?" He muffled a groan. That would be what I expected for a report. And I knew what I was stepping into when I offered to keep watch. Allowed an old man the chance to gripe. The two exchanged nods in the darkening environment. "Well, brother Radomil," Ripson's voice grew hushed and darkly with each syllable uttered. "Keep an eye out for flights. We'll be camped out front." "We?" He squinted as he leaned to the side to catch a glimpse of his brother's traveling companions. "Didn't take you for wanting people to slow you down. Which of our brothers and sisters joined you?" "None of them did." "None? Then who?" Ripson threw a hand up as his head jerked upward, catching the darkened silhouette of a bird flapping overhead. "Just a bird." "You're certainly jumpy for a bird. Is everything all right?" The bulky monk turned back to Radomil. His eyes sparkled with fiery intent. "Before the bridge, my group was attacked by the Saul." "The Saul? That far west? Are you certain?" Radomil instinctually rested his hands on his thighs. "I'm not." Radomil frowned. "Then why are you going on about the Saul?" "I think it's them." Ripson watched as his brother let out an extended sigh. "What?" "They may have looked the part, but I have my doubts. Not every shadow cast hides an enemy. Don't patronize me. I know better than to see danger lurking behind every corner. Sudug and Kolug, their memories still burn hotly within my heart." Okay. I didn't mean to prick at that wound, but it's never bad to be reminded." Radomil stretched his right hand upward. "Anyway, do you need food or drink? Any food or drink?" "No, we'll be fine for tonight." Ripson pivoted to return to his traveling companions. "But thank you for the offer. Tomorrow morning, though, we'll probably need something filling." "Understood." He nodded as he watched the monk's shadow melt into the night. Once his comrade was out of sight, he rubbed his legs and stood up, grabbing his blanket before it could fall to the ground. Lacking urgency in his steps, he entered his home to prepare for the night ahead. "Took you long enough." Tamelia's remark greeted the monk as he returned to the group, who had unloaded their gear and munched on some bread as they waited. Ripson exhaled sharply, eyeing his immediate surroundings. "We ought to set up our tents and rest. The owner is fine if we're a little off the road in the direction of his house." A ripple of questions poured from the group as Josephine's voice cut through the others. "What about a proper meal tonight?" "A fire here is out of the question. We'll get something more filling." He paused to avoid speaking over the groans. "We'll get something more filling around mid-morning tomorrow when we leave." "It better be a feast. We're going to be starving," Tamelia grumbled as she helped Harl put together one of the tents. "Also, to make certain everyone is unhappy, I'll share a tent with Malam." The monk felt the group's eyes dig into his direction, probing for an appropriate answer. "Planning on putting me to rest in the middle of the night?" Malam's voice cut through the air. Let's change that. Yeesh. The monk laughed from the back of his throat. Let's call it an attempt to build trust between us. Trust? Malam snorted. I hope none of you are trusting this brute to keep his word. You did trust him with your rapier, Tamilia pointed out. That's a good point. Jahar shook his head in agreement with his friend. Just go to sleep quickly. You won't even realize he's there. I didn't have any troubles when we shared a tent the other night. Perhaps that saw hit your head when he broke your loot. Jahar froze for a moment before returning to help his friend set up the tents. Barbed retorts are a poor branch to extend. Dieter began erecting the tent he and his wife were going to share. You all agree with this? Malam's voice grew shrill as it pierced the night. The farmer grunted as he stooped down to hammer a stake in the soil. I do. And the rest of you? The boy's voice contorted. Contorted. The boy's voice contorted the words more into a demand than a question. Aye, doesn't bother me any. In fact, it sounds like a good idea. Tamilia tied a cord to one of the stakes. Better to try to build trust between you two than continue this weird animosity. Jarl hammered the last stake. Okay. Last stake for the tent into place. Josephine moved over to the boy and put her hand on his slumping shoulders. Don't fret, no harm will come to you. Malam's shoulders sagged even lower. With a quick motion, he slid out of the old woman's reach. Fine. Before long, the 3 tents were ready to welcome the travelers and provide them with a night of confined protection from the open skies. This is a fairly safe area, despite being close to the main road like this. The monk rubbed his forehead with the knuckle of his thumb. People here are rather vigilant, as they ought to be. Dieter massaged his shoulder. His eyes caught the glow of seeming off in the distance. Doesn't matter how far or near, farming community has no place for those who wear the spots of a coward. Ripson bobbed his head in agreement. Cowardice is justly rewarded in due time. Well, they're back to their old man grumpy talk. I'm going to bed. Tamilia crawled into the tent without waiting for a response from anyone else. She has the right of it. Best to get to bed early and start tomorrow in the same manner. The monk held out Malam's rapier, offering it to the farmers. Hold on to this for the night. Dieter took the weapon. Of course. So much for trusting me. Malam shook his head as he crawled into the tent. Got to build that trust before we can use it. Silence greeted the retort as everyone entered their tents. The light breeze stiffened into a series of gusts. With it, the chill in the air worsened. Inside the tent, Jahar scooted to one side. He set his belongings next to Tamilia's, forming a makeshift divider in the middle. Lying down on his side, he slowed down his breathing, hoping sleep would take him quickly. However, he laid there for some time, unable to sleep. Hey. He opened one eye and looked through the darkness toward Tamilia's direction. Yeah? Do you really think they're insane? Her voice intermingled with the noise of the wind outside. Huh? She groaned and shoved one of their packs so she could position herself closer to Jahar without raising her voice. Do you really think they're insane? He sucked on one of his front teeth as he collected his thoughts. No, I'm thinking they're at the castle town with Cyrus. But part of me feels strongly that they're in Rowan. I hope so, but I'm worried. You don't think they're there? He propped himself up with his elbow. Like they're stuck slaving away in Samian or something? We've checked the records, and even Captain Solern mentioned to me that they did cross the Great Bridge. I know Avier didn't really help, but from what I saw with her, they went through here. I don't know. Tamilia scratched at her stomach. I feel this gnawing in the pit of my stomach. It won't go away. You sure that's just not you being hungry? Shut up. She lazily slapped Jahar. I don't think we should be joking about this. Sorry. He cleared his throat. I think Vanine dragged Hardwin to the south. She's too headstrong to be told to wait. She probably told Hardwin that's what she wanted to do, and That's what they did. He's too much of a pleaser. Still bitter? That has nothing to do with it. Doesn't quite sound like it to me. Well, you ought to clean the honey out of your ears then. Charles spat the words out of his mouth. Okay, Grouch. You haven't really said much about them. I didn't know what you were thinking. I thought I was pretty certain about that. It doesn't bother you one bit that they decided not to come back? No, I totally get it. I don't hate Marie, but I want to travel too. Tamelia inhaled a deep breath and let out a drawn-out sigh. I was also wanting to know how you were holding up. After that attack from the Saul, you've been even more quiet than usual. I'm fine. Fine, huh? I've heard that word a lot lately. You either got hurt or worse. She yawned. We've practically gone to the other side of Perail and have barely learned anything about where those two could be, where they could have gone. And now you've lost your loot. We don't have any money. We barely have any honey or maple to help us with bartering so we can travel farther or even get back home. We're with friends who can help. We'll have to trust them and go from there. I like Josephine and Dieter, but can they really help us that much? She held up her hand to stop herself from yawning. They don't strike me as people who are hiding a lot of wealth. Fair enough. Maybe Malam can help us somehow once he returns home. I don't know. He's been weird ever since the attack. I'm glad you noticed that. Is it really that weird, though? He had to face people who brutalized him only a short while ago. That terror turned to rage. I could practically feel it. What you felt is one thing, but from where I stood and what I saw, it was different. What do you mean by that? I don't know. She yawned heavily once more. I didn't like it, and I really don't want to talk about him anymore. I'll be glad once he's home. Once we get him home. Okay. He paused momentarily to regroup his thoughts. We also have Ripson, who can help us somehow. Yeah, you don't really sound too confident in that happening. Confident or not, we don't have much of a choice. And what about your loot, your own dreams? And what about them? Nothing I can do about that now. I didn't die or get hurt, so I'll take that as a sign. She rolled her eyes in the darkened tent, vainly wishing her friend could see her reaction. You and your signs. Gonna fall at the stars I was born under next? Well, outside of wanting to play music, what else have you chosen to do? You almost always fall to letting fate decide for you. I still would have left Mahri to find them, even if the others had voted differently. Is that so? It is. It's more than that. But you know, we'll be there. Tamilia's voice trailed off as sleep swept over her eyes. Charles bristled where he lay, waiting for her to add more. Once he realized she had dozed off, he let out a sigh of relief. He shifted and rolled about in place, seeking a more comfortable position. It took what felt like half the night before he followed his friend to the realm of dreams. Before slipping away, he muttered under his breath, "For each other, no matter what." He stood at the edge of a great precipice. Before him, the wild expanse of a valley stretched north and south. But on the other side, like some restrained hand, rose a chain of mountains darkly towering, even over his own side, pockmarked, across the land. Forests and woods, like bushes lined along a lighter green road, covered a considerable portion of the valley. Here and there, strips of fields and crops of amber, grains, and browns of toiled soil punctuated the greenery, taking focus away from the globules of gray and brown, bark browns dotting the valley, as though a small smattering of mud and stone had been flung from the very spot he currently stood. Two colors rose above the verdant valley's offering. In the center, like an eye peering upward angrily, an azure puddle gleamed as it reflected the daylight it was being showered with. The other color bled sickly from the north. Before the forests succumbed to the frosts and mists of the tundra, a pure emerald green throbbed, taking root, as thin tendrils, like vines, wriggled and writhed. At first, they remained close to the source, but gradually they rapaciously bored throughout the valley. As they grew, the colors of the valley paled. Before long, even the blue puddle muddied into a steel gray, as the vines only strengthened their grip. Clawing upward, they eventually reached him, frozen in place. They bound tightly around his form, as his vision was engulfed by their incandescent green. Without his sight, his hearing took command. The sound of thousands of flames crackled in a discordant symphony, beckoning for their master's presence. Louder and louder, their cries wailed. Their fervor grew into that of a wild storm, still holding him in that blinding green. Then, all at once, silence remained. An eternity followed. At its end, hollow laughter greeted his ears. Not a cacophony of a myriad of laughs, chuckles, and cachinnations, but a singular voice, mingled with mocking and disgust, before the green drifted away into nothingness. Jahar woke with a shudder. He blinked in the darkness as he slowed his heavy breathing. He rolled to his side, facing the canvas of the tent, but already knew his rest was doomed for the remainder of the night. Sleep had left his side. Thinking moment. Either I heard Malam or Ripson trying to kill one another, or I slept just enough to make me very tired by midday. Acting slowly against the soreness from the previous day's journey, Jarl twisted his way through the opening and stood in front of the tent, stretching his arms upward before bending to one side, then to the other. His eyes acclimated, as well as they could, to the still night draped around him. Shadows upon shadows nestled and overlapped, woven together like some indiscernible patchwork curtain. Its sprawl offered nothing for view, except for the random points of light above as they whispered answers and questions from the heavens, and the glow of Saming to the west. His head tilted up to survey the sky, from one point of light to some cluster. Without rhyme or reason, his eyes sought something, anything to satiate his current curiosity. With it being so close to winter, I won't be able to see the hermit. His eyes drifted westward. Now there's the serpent, barely poking over the horizon. Then a little north of it ought to be... there it is. There's Curvat, the dog, and Solomon, the club. Like a chain, each link, each constellation clasped onto another. Where one story sprouted in his mind, it led to two or three more. Aaliyah's voice crept into his ears, and he smiled, thinking of Mahri, as well as Tamilia's grandmother, and his own family. The sound of the words from his memories, like a lantern in a fog, guided him around the tapestry of the night sky and its bountiful stories. How many tales are there buried up in the sheet of stars? Some secret treasure hiding up there only for the peaceful or imaginative to learn and tell? Is that what I'm missing? Some piece that's able to pull off the mask of the heavens? Is that why it was taken away from me? We met Malam. Well, even before that I was in Mahri, not some large city like Samin or even somewhere like River Split, where the river could have been my road. That's why. That's why I could never quite find the right notes to play, why the song eluded me. It is a gift meant for another, and I only hear a part of a conversation not truly meant for me. That's the reason, isn't it? He scratched his chest before quietly re-entering his tent. Ignoring Tamilia's soft snoring, he retrieved his spear and exited as stealthily as he had entered. He had a vague sense of where not to practice, so he stepped onto the road and continued until he was on the other side. Sluggishly, he thrust and slashed outward with his weapon in his right hand. Practiced this a few times, tightening his form and focusing on the movement before switching to his left. A few spear thrusts later, he held his spear with both hands and repeated the process, alternating the slashing directions. From there, he methodically quickened his movement and pivoted after each slash to realign himself. He spun and spun and spun like a four-pointed prickly star. Before long, sweat poured from his forehead and into his eyes, causing him to break his pace as he dragged his clothed forearms across his face. After some time, he stabbed the ground and looked up toward the sky once more. The pristine clarity of night had grown fuzzy, heralding dawn's imminent approach. Off to the north, he noticed the outline of the mountains cutting into the sky, blocking out some of the constellations. However, he did see one point shining brilliantly in the darkness all around. Either that's a star I don't recognize, or the summit is already catching McCall's light. After plucking his weapon from the dirt, the young man began walking back to the tents, guided by their outlines, which he could now see. As he drew near, he noticed Ripson sitting in front of his own tent with his head bowed and his chin buried in his chest. The young Mahrian placed his spear on the ground next to his tent, hoping Tamili was still resting while he stretched his fingers. His stomach grumbled, and he gave it a reassuring pat. Might still be some time before we get a proper meal. Good of you to not retreat and go idle. Though not loud, the meditating monk's voice cut through the cold air as he raised his head, catching sight of Jaharl freezing in his tracks. What do you mean? His eyes focused on the Mahrian's shadowed figure as he tried to peer through the veil of the weakening night. He gestured toward where Jaharl had set his spear, unconcerned if he could see him or not. Not to say that it's been that long, but I have not seen you practicing that so early, nor of your own volition. If that's what's demanded of me, then so be it. His stomach grumbled again, as if in agreement. The owner of the house here will give us some food before we go. It may not be a savory meal, but it'll fill us up till Sameen. We're that close, huh? I've seen the glow off to the west, but wasn't certain how far we are away. We'll most likely reach its gates before dusk, unless we get caught up in a storm. Do you think that's likely? A storm, that is? No, not today, but it will get colder. You can already feel it in the air. That short snowstorm and pre-form up made that easier to tell. And getting closer to the open waters of the seas to the west, Dolair doesn't feel nearly as cold, even though it's on the edge of the tundra up north. You've been to Dolair? I've been there, and Torness. Torness, by the lake so blue. A wry smile creased over the monk's features and remained for a moment before his usual scowl reformed. That is what they like to talk about. Though to be fair to those people, it is a stunningly beautiful lake. Odd. Why is he opening like this to me now? Is he hiding something from me? Is Malam all right? The scowl deepened in the dark. He's fine, sleeping like a newborn. That's good. Hopefully the two of you will get along, especially with Sammy not so far away. Sure. Silent moment passed. I guess I'd better leave it at that. Jaharl cleared his throat. Sounds like you've done a lot of traveling through Perail. How often do you get to travel outside of its borders? Ripson grunted as he stood. Enough. But there are more pressing matters here. At home. Which has kept me from doing more traveling. I see. I'm going to check with the owner. It'll be dawn before long. Might as well rouse the others. The earlier they're up, the more likely we'll arrive before dusk. Not that it's likely to happen, but it won't be too much trouble if we get there after dusk, will it? They'll have the gates locked and tell us to bury our heads in the dirt and wait till morning. Oh, yeah. So best to get going early and stay on a hasty, a steady pace. Jaharl chuckled. Isn't that the same thing? The road of haste beckons fools and trouble alike. Best a steady measure, I say. One measured step is longer than 3 made in haste, I guess. Haven't heard that one before, but I like it. Ripson's scowl softened as he departed the camp for Radmil's home, leaving Jaharl with the unenviable task of waking their companion so early in the morning. Dum-bum-bum. So, yes, that is the chapter 30. So. Pum-pum-pum-pum. Actually, there are some things in here, and actually for the next few chapters there's going to be some stuff. So Kurvat the dog is a constellation named after the dutiful dog Kurvat, who protected his master from trouble and even death until Violin tricked him into being caught in the sheet of stars above. The Hermit, a constellation seemingly pulled from the infinite, about an elderly old man who does nothing but sleep. Mask of Heavens, that which covers the secrets of the universe. Solomon the Club, a constellation named after a great warrior whose deeds were honored by the gods by placing him among the sheet of stars. The Serpent is a constellation that some believe is meant to honor the Nair, but the true origins have been lost in time. So, yeah, that is that. So, yeah, a little bit of similar, but of like different points that have gone on through the story so far, but a little bit different in certain ways about it. So it's just kind of similar but different. As that's sort of what's happening here, is that now there's kind of a transition happening. Mind you, it is getting towards the end of the book, but this is also, yeah, it's still going to be leading into just how differently the vibe is as it reaches the end and goes into part 2. That just, yeah, tonally it's going to be, there's some differences, as well as just some, not odd, but it's just, you know, you have different things going on, and the like for a big sizable portion of the book, there's a little bit more of a lighthearted affair, and that's going to slowly start to change. Not necessarily out of like bleak darkness or anything of the sort, but there's a growing up that needs to be had. So, yes. But that is what I got. So thank you for watching a little bit. Saturday next week we'll get into it, and it'll be, let's see here. I think what we'll do is, I'm trying to think. Yeah, so I think, yeah, next week Saturday will be 31, 32, 33. And then the last chat, and then the following week will be the last 4. So, yeah, there'll be 2 more. Oh boy, 2 more. 2 more readings, and then we'll be done with part 1. So, yeah, exciting times. So, thanks once again. If you've got any comments or anything of the sort, please let me know. Yeah, that's it. Toodaloos. Enjoy the rest of your day, weekend, weeknight, whatever.